Ethan Carter sat in his small office on the outskirts of New Chicago, staring at the holographic screen floating in front of him. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the ancient air conditioner, struggling to keep up with the summer heat. His desk was cluttered with books, papers, and a half-empty cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Ethan was a historian, one of the few who still cared about the past in a world that seemed obsessed with moving forward. His specialty was interstellar relations, specifically humanity's long-standing partnership with the Valerii, or an alien race that had arrived on Earth 3,000 years earlier. They were tall, slender beings with shimmering metallic skin and eyes like liquid silver. At first, their arrival had caused panic. People feared invasion, enslavement, or worse. But the Valerii had come in peace. They shared their advanced technology freely, curing diseases, solving energy crises, and teaching humans how to live sustainably. Over time, they became partners, advisors, and even friends. Humanity flourished under their guidance, building cities that reached into the clouds and creating a society where hunger, war, and poverty were distant memories. But today, something felt different. Ethan couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his chest since he woke up. It wasn't just the oppressive heat, or the fact that his coffee tasted burnt again. Something bigger was coming, he could feel it. And then, as if on cue, his comm device buzzed loudly on the desk. He glanced at the caller ID, Olivia Drake. Olivia was another historian, though she preferred the term archivist. She was also one of the few people Ethan trusted completely. "Hey, Olivia," Ethan said, answering the call. Her face appeared on the screen, pale and tense. Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her usual calm demeanor was replaced by something close to fear. "You need to see this," she said without preamble. Her voice trembled slightly, which was unusual for her. Olivia prided herself on being unflappable, no matter what kind of historical disaster she uncovered. Whatever she had found, it must be serious. "What is it?" Ethan asked, leaning closer to the screen. "The Valerii, they've declared war." For a moment, Ethan thought he'd misheard her. "What do you mean, declared war? That doesn't make any sense. The Valerii have been helping us for thousands of years. Why would they suddenly—" "I don't know why," Olivia interrupted, her voice rising. "But it's happening. There's going to be an official announcement in less than an hour. I thought you should know before everyone else finds out." Ethan stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. War? With the Valerii? It sounded absurd. The idea of fighting against the very beings who had helped humanity rise from the ashes of its own mistakes was almost laughable. Yet there was no trace of humor in Olivia's expression. She looked terrified. "Are you sure about this?" Ethan asked finally, his voice quieter now. Olivia nodded. "I intercepted some communications between their diplomatic corps. It's real, Ethan. They're giving us 48 hours to surrender control of our resources. They'll attack." Ethan leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his short brown hair. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything the Valerii had done for humanity. What could possibly have changed? Before he could ask more questions, Olivia continued. "Listen, I'm sending you the files I found. You need to look at them. There's something off about all of this. I think there's more going on than we realize." The call ended abruptly, leaving Ethan alone with his thoughts. A few seconds later, the files arrived in his inbox. He hesitated, staring at the blinking notification on his screen. Part of him wanted to ignore it, to pretend none of this was real. But curiosity got the better of him. He opened the first file. Inside were transcripts of conversations between high-ranking Valerii officials. The language was formal and precise, but the message was clear. Earth was seen as a threat. According to the documents, the Valerii believed humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy posed a risk to the delicate balance they had worked so hard to maintain. They claimed that Earth's unchecked growth would destabilize entire star systems, leading to chaos and destruction. Ethan read through the files again and again, each word sinking deeper into his mind. He couldn't understand how things had escalated so quickly. For 3,000 years, humanity and the Valari had coexisted peacefully. How had it come to this? As he sat there, lost in thought, the news alerts began flooding in. Every channel, every social media platform, every public screen displayed the same image. Zanara, the Valari ambassador to Earth. His smooth metallic voice echoed through the city, reaching every corner of the globe. People of Earth, Zanara began, his tone calm but firm. For millennia, we have guided your species toward prosperity. We have shared our knowledge, our resources, and our vision for a harmonious future. But recent developments have forced us to reconsider our relationship. Your relentless expansion threatens the stability of the galaxy. Unless you agree to relinquish control of your planetary resources within 48 hours, we will have no choice but to act decisively. The message ended, leaving behind a stunned silence. People stopped in the streets, staring at the screens in disbelief. Some cried, others shouted in anger, but most simply stood there, too shocked to react. Not everyone was surprised, though across the planet, whispers of excitement began to spread. In a small farming town outside New Chicago, Alex Monroe watched the broadcast with a grin spreading across his weathered face. Alex was a retired engineer who had spent the last decade growing crops and raising livestock. To him, life had become too easy, too predictable. He missed the days when survival meant innovation and resilience. Finally, Alex muttered to himself, shaking his head, something worth waking up for. He wasn't the only one who felt that way. In cities and towns around the world, older generations remembered a time before the Valari. They remembered hardship, struggle, and triumph. To them, this wasn't a declaration of war, it was a challenge. And humanity, it seemed, was ready to rise to the occasion. The streets of New Chicago buzzed with a mix of fear and defiance. People gathered in small groups, their eyes glued to the massive screens mounted on buildings. Zanara's face loomed large above them, his metallic features gleaming under the artificial light. His voice echoed through the city, calm but firm, repeating the same ultimatum: surrender or face annihilation. Ethan Carter stood among the crowd, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. He felt out of place, like an observer, watching a storm roll in. Around him, people whispered nervously, some clutching their children close, others arguing about what should be done. A young woman nearby clutched her phone, tears streaming down her face as she tried to call someone who wasn't answering. Ethan wanted to say something comforting, but the words stuck in his throat. What could he possibly say? Humanity's oldest allies, had just declared war. As the broadcast ended, the screens switched to news anchors frantically discussing the situation. Analysts debated whether the threat was real or just a bluff. Some suggested it might be a misunderstanding, while others argued that surrender was the only option. But Ethan noticed something strange. Not everyone looked scared. In fact, some people seemed almost excited. A man standing a few feet away grinned broadly, his arms crossed over his chest. "About time," he said to no one in particular. "We've been sitting around doing nothing for too long." Ethan frowned. How could anyone be happy about this? The Valari weren't just any enemy, they were advanced, powerful, and had technology far beyond anything humanity currently possessed. Fighting them would be suicide. Yet the man's comments sparked murmurs of agreement from those around him. Someone else chimed in, saying, "Maybe this is exactly what we needed. A wake-up call." Ethan shook his head and turned away. He didn't understand this reaction. Wasn't fear the natural response to something like this? But as he walked back to his office, he realized that maybe these people weren't wrong. For 3,000 years, humanity had relied on the Valari for everything. They had grown complacent, lazy even. Maybe the threat of war was the push they needed to remember who they really were. Back at his desk, Ethan pulled up the files Olivia had sent him. He reread the transcripts, searching for clues that might explain why the Valari had suddenly turned against humanity. According to the documents, the Valari believed Earth's expansion was destabilizing the galaxy. But that didn't make sense. Humanity hadn't colonized new planets in centuries, not since the Valari had imposed strict regulations on space travel. So why now? Why declare war after all this time? His thoughts were interrupted by another call from Olivia. Her face appeared on his screen, looking even more frazzled than before. "Did you see the announcement?" she asked, skipping any formal greeting. "I saw it," Ethan replied, rubbing his temples. "It doesn't add up, Olivia. We haven't done anything to provoke them. None of this makes sense." "That's because there's more to it," Olivia said urgently. "I found something else. Something big." "What is it?" Ethan leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. "I'll send it to you now," she said, typing quickly on her end. A moment later, a new file popped up on Ethan's screen. He opened it cautiously, unsure what to expect. Inside were schematics, blueprints for machines and devices unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. They were labeled with dates that predated the Valari's arrival on Earth. At first glance, they looked like weapons, sleek, futuristic designs capable of incredible destruction. But what caught Ethan's attention was the note attached to the file. It read, *suppressed technologies classified. Ethan's heart raced as he scrolled through the documents. These weren't just random inventions. They were tools of war, advanced weaponry, energy shields, and even something called the Eclipse Array, which appeared to be a device capable of disabling entire fleets. And according to the notes, these technologies had been developed by humanity, not the Valari. "This can't be right," Ethan muttered, scanning the pages again. "If we had this kind of tech, why didn't we use it?" "Because the Valari took it away," Olivia said grimly. "They didn't just help us build a better future, Ethan. They dismantled our ability to defend ourselves. They suppressed our progress, kept us dependent on them." Ethan stared at the screen, his mind reeling. If Olivia was right, then the Valari weren't just benevolent guides, they were controllers. They had manipulated humanity, keeping them weak and reliant. And now, when humanity might finally pose a threat, they were trying to eliminate the competition. Before Ethan could respond, Olivia continued, "There's more. I think these technologies are still out there, buried in old archives, forgotten bunkers, places like that. If we can find them, we might stand a chance." "A chance against the Valari?" Ethan asked skeptically. "Even if we do find this stuff, it's been sitting around for thousands of years. There's no guarantee it still works." "It's better than nothing," Olivia shot back. "Look, I know it sounds crazy, but we don't have a choice. If we give up without a fight, we're handing over everything we've built." "Is that really what you want?" Ethan didn't answer. He wanted to argue, to tell her that fighting the Valari was hopeless, but deep down, he knew she was right. Surrender wasn't an option, it never had been. Humanity had survived wars, plagues, and disasters before. This was just another challenge, albeit a bigger one. "I'll start digging into these files," Ethan said finally. "See if I can figure out where this stuff might be hidden." "Good," Olivia replied, her tone softening. "And Ethan, be careful. If the Valari find out we're onto them, they won't hesitate to stop us." The call ended, leaving Ethan alone with the weight of what he'd just learned. He spent the next several hours poring over the documents, cross-referencing locations, and piecing together fragments of information. By the time night fell, he had a list of potential sites where the suppressed technologies might be stored. Most were in remote areas, abandoned military bases, underground vaults, and even old research facilities buried beneath mountains. As he worked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the lights made him glance over his shoulder. Paranoia crept in, fueled by the knowledge that the stakes had never been higher. If the Valerie discovered what he and Olivia were planning, they wouldn't hesitate to silence them permanently. Despite the tension, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. For the first time in years, he felt alive. This wasn't just about survival, it was about reclaiming humanity's independence. The Valari had underestimated them, and that was a mistake they would regret. Across the country, similar conversations were taking place. In a quiet farmhouse outside New Chicago, Alex Monroe sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by maps and blueprints. He had heard the rumors about suppressed technologies and knew exactly where to look. Years ago, he had stumbled upon an old military bunker while exploring the desert. Inside, he'd found crates filled with strange equipment, things he couldn't identify at the time. Now, he wondered if those artifacts might hold the key to humanity's salvation. Alex grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. He didn't have much time, but he didn't need it. He had spent decades preparing for moments like this, honing his skills and gathering resources. The Valerie thought they could intimidate humanity into submission, but they had forgotten one crucial thing: humans didn't back down easily. In cities and towns across the planet, others were coming to the same conclusion. Mia Torres, a former fighter pilot, dusted off her old flight suit and began tinkering with a mothballed aircraft. Ryan Cole, a tech genius with a knack for hacking, scoured black markets for spare parts and ancient manuals. Grace Bennett, a biologist, experimented with bioengineered solutions that might give humanity an edge in battle. Each person brought their own expertise to the table, united by a shared goal: to fight back. They didn't know each other yet, but their paths would soon cross. Together, they would form the backbone of humanity's resistance, a ragtag group of individuals determined to prove that Earth wasn't just a pawn in the Valerie's game. As dawn broke over the horizon, Ethan packed up his notes and prepared to leave. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he was ready. The Valerie had declared war, thinking humanity would crumble under the pressure. Instead, they had ignited a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Ethan stepped outside, the cool morning air brushing against his face. Somewhere in the distance, a bird chirped, oblivious to the chaos unfolding around it. For a brief moment, Ethan allowed himself to imagine a different future, one where humanity stood tall, free from the shadow of its alien overlords. Then he got into his car and drove off, ready to face whatever came next. The sun was setting over the Nevada desert, casting long shadows across the cracked earth. Alex Monroe stood at the edge of an old military bunker, his hands resting on his hips as he surveyed the scene. The entrance was partially buried under sand and rubble, but Alex knew what lay beneath. Years ago, during one of his many solo expeditions, he had stumbled upon this place by accident. Back then, he hadn't thought much of it, just another relic of a forgotten era. But now, with the Valeri's ultimatum hanging over humanity's head, this bunker might hold the key to their survival. He pulled out a flashlight and stepped inside, brushing away cobwebs that clung to the doorway. The air was thick with dust, and every step echoed loudly in the narrow corridor. Alex moved carefully, his boots crunching against debris scattered across the floor. He remembered the layout well enough. Rows of rusted crates stacked along the walls, most of them sealed shut or too damaged to open. But there were a few that had survived the passage of time intact. Those were the ones he was after. As he reached the first crate, Alex knelt down and examined the lock. It was old and corroded, but not impossible to break. He pulled a small crowbar from his belt and pried it open. Inside, he found exactly what he'd hoped for: strange-looking devices wrapped in protective fabric. Some were shaped like discs, others like rods, and a few resembled miniature cannons. None of them looked familiar, but Alex didn't need to understand how they worked just yet. What mattered was that they existed and that they might give humanity a fighting chance. While Alex worked in solitude, miles away in New Chicago, Ethan Carter was having trouble sleeping. His apartment felt smaller than usual, the silence pressing down on him like a weight. The files Olivia had sent him were spread out across his desk, glowing faintly in the dim light. He had spent hours poring over them, trying to make sense of the information. But no matter how hard he tried, one question kept nagging at him. Why would the Valerie suppress Earth's technology only to declare war now? Ethan sat up in bed and rubbed his eyes. Sleep wasn't going to come easily tonight. He grabbed his tablet and opened a secure chat with Olivia. To his surprise, she was already online. "Can't sleep either?" she asked when Ethan's message popped up. "Not really," he replied, typing quickly. "I keep thinking about the timing. Why now? If the Valari wanted to stop us, they could have done it centuries ago. Why wait until we're strong enough to fight back?" Olivia paused before answering. "Maybe that's the point. Maybe they waited because they thought we'd never recover our strength. They underestimated us." Ethan frowned at the screen. That made sense in theory, but it still didn't explain everything. Even so, declaring war is extreme. They must have a reason. Or maybe they're scared, Olivia suggested. Think about it. For 3,000 years, they've been in control. Now, suddenly, they see a threat. Whether it's real or imagined, doesn't matter, they're acting out of fear. Ethan nodded to himself. Fear could make anyone irrational, even beings as advanced as the Veil. Still, it didn't sit right with him. Something about the whole situation felt off. Meanwhile, in a quiet suburb outside Los Angeles, Mia Torres was busy tinkering with an old fighter jet she had salvaged from a scrapyard. The plane was ancient, its paint peeling and its engines barely functional. But Mia saw potential where others saw junk. She had always loved machines, especially those designed for speed and precision. As a child, she used to watch her father repair cars in their garage, learning the tricks of the trade by observing his steady hands. Now, those skills were coming in handy. Mia tightened a bolt and stepped back to admire her work. The cockpit was cramped, filled with wires and gauges that looked like they belonged in a museum. But she had managed to modify the engines, using parts scavenged from drones and other outdated vehicles. If her calculations were correct, the jet should be able to reach speeds far beyond its original design. All it needed was a test run. She climbed into the cockpit and strapped herself in, running through a mental checklist. Fuel levels, check. Control systems, check. Weapon systems, not yet functional, but she was working on it. With a deep breath, Mia powered up the engine. It sputtered at first, then roared to life, shaking the ground beneath her feet. She smiled, satisfaction washing over her. This old bird still had some fight left in it. Elsewhere, Ryan Cole was hunched over a cluttered workbench in his tiny apartment. His fingers flew across a keyboard connected to a jumble of wires and circuit boards. On the screen in front of him, lines of code scrolled rapidly, each line representing a piece of the puzzle he was trying to solve. Ryan was a hacker by trade, or at least he used to be. These days, he preferred to call himself a problem solver. Whatever you called it, his skills were unmatched. What Ryan was working on now was unlike anything he had ever attempted before, using fragments of data recovered from the suppressed technologies. He was trying to reverse engineer a communication system capable of hacking into Valari networks. It was risky business. If the aliens caught wind of what he was doing, they would come after him without hesitation. But Ryan didn't care. He thrived under pressure, and this was the biggest challenge of his life. Grace Bennett, on the other hand, was taking a different approach. In her modest lab, tucked away in a university basement, she was experimenting with biological solutions to counteract the Valerie's superior strength. Grace specialized in microbiology, and her research focused on creating organisms that could adapt to extreme environments. Over the past few days, She had been testing various strains of bacteria and viruses, looking for something that might weaken the aliens' defenses. Her latest experiment involved a strain of engineered microbes, capable of breaking down metallic compounds. If successful, it could degrade the Villari's armor-like skin, making them vulnerable to attack. So far, the results were promising, though Grace knew there was still a long way to go. Science took time, and time was a luxury they didn't have. Back in the Nevada desert, Alex had finished cataloging the contents of the bunker. He loaded several crates onto the back of his truck, careful not to damage the fragile equipment inside. As he drove off into the night, he couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. Humanity had been pushed to the brink, but it wasn't over yet. People like Ethan, Olivia, Mia, Ryan, and Grace were already stepping up, using their unique talents to prepare for the fight ahead. Alex grinned as he glanced at the crates in his rearview mirror. The Valerie had declared war, thinking humanity would crumble. Instead, they had awakened a spirit that had lain dormant for thousands of years. A spirit of resilience, innovation, and determination. And when the time came, humanity would show the Valari just how wrong they had been. Across the planet, whispers of rebellion grew louder. Underground networks began sharing information about hidden technologies and secret plans. People who had once lived ordinary lives were now preparing for battle. Farmers became engineers, teachers became strategists, and artists became warriors. Everyone had a role to play, no matter how small, in New Chicago. Ethan received a message from Alex, found something big. It read, "Meet me at coordinates 36.2547, 115.1879. Bring Olivia." Ethan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This was it, the moment they had been waiting for. He forwarded the message to Olivia, who responded almost instantly. "On my way," she wrote. As dawn broke over the horizon, the pieces of humanity's resistance began falling into place. The Valerie had declared war, but they had underestimated their opponents. Humanity wasn't just going to survive, they were going to fight back. And when the battle began, the galaxy would witness the true strength of a species that refused to give up. The desert stretched endlessly under the bright midday sun, its golden sands shimmering like waves frozen in time. Ethan Carter squinted against the glare as he stepped out of his car, shielding his eyes with one hand. Beside him, Olivia Drake adjusted her sunglasses and scanned the horizon. The coordinates Alex had sent them to were in the middle of nowhere, just miles of barren land and rocky hills. But there, in the distance, they could see a cloud of dust rising into the air. A truck was approaching fast. "Think this is it?" Olivia asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and unease. "It has to be," Ethan replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "Let's hope whatever Alex found is worth the trip." As the truck skidded to a stop a few feet away, Alex Monroe hopped out, his face tanned and weathered from years spent outdoors. He wore a faded flannel shirt rolled up to his elbows, revealing arms lined with scars and calluses. Despite his rugged appearance, there was a spark of determination in his eyes that made Ethan feel strangely reassured. "You're late," Alex said with a grin, though his tone was friendly enough. "Come on, you'll want to see this." He led them to the back of the truck, where several crates were stacked neatly. Opening one, Alex revealed an array of strange devices, some metallic, others sleek and smooth, all clearly advanced beyond anything currently in use on Earth. Ethan crouched down for a closer look, his fingers brushing lightly over the surface of a disc-shaped object. "What are these?" Olivia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Old tech," Alex explained. "Stuff the Valerie didn't want us to have. I found this bunker buried out here years ago, but I didn't know what it meant until now. Looks like we've got weapons. Shields. Maybe even something that could take down their ships." Ethan picked up a small rod-like device, examining it carefully. It hummed faintly when he touched it, sending a shiver down his spine. "Do we know how any of this works?" Alex shrugged. Not yet. But if we can figure it out, we might actually stand a chance. Later that evening, the three of them gathered around a makeshift table inside a nearby abandoned warehouse Alex had claimed as a temporary base. Maps, blueprints, and notes covered every available surface, illuminated by the soft glow of portable lamps. They weren't alone anymore. Word had spread quickly about the discovery in the desert, and others had begun arriving to lend their skills. Mia Torres was the first newcomer. She strode into the warehouse with confidence, her flight suit dusty, but still bearing the marks of countless repairs. Her dark hair was tied back in a tight ponytail, and her sharp green eyes scanned the room with curiosity. When she saw the crates of alien-suppressed technology, her lips curled into a satisfied smile. "I heard you guys found some toys," she said, walking over to inspect the devices. "Mind if I take a look?" Before anyone could answer, Ryan Cole entered, lugging a heavy backpack filled with gadgets and tools. His wiry frame and unkempt brown hair gave him a boyish appearance, but his sharp intellect was evident in the way he immediately began tinkering with one of the devices. Grace Bennett arrived shortly after, carrying vials of glowing liquid and stacks of research papers. Her calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the chaos around her, but her presence brought a sense of order to the group. By nightfall, the warehouse buzzed with activity. Everyone worked tirelessly, piecing together fragments of knowledge and testing theories. Mia focused on modifying outdated aircraft to accommodate the new technology, while Ryan attempted to decode the inner workings of the alien devices. Grace experimented with biological agents, hoping to find a weakness in the Valerie's physiology. Meanwhile, Ethan and Olivia coordinated efforts, organizing information and strategizing plans. Alex stood at the center of it all, watching silently as the team came together. These people were strangers to each other, drawn together by circumstance and necessity. Yet despite their differences, they shared a common goal: survival, and perhaps more importantly, freedom. "This feels right," Olivia murmured to Ethan during a brief lull in the work. She gestured toward the bustling group. "Like we're finally doing something meaningful." Ethan nodded, though his expression remained thoughtful. "It's amazing what happens when people realize they have no choice but to fight back. Still, I can't shake the feeling that we're missing something." Olivia frowned. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "Just, why now? Why declare war after 3,000 years of peace? There's got to be more to it than what they've told us." Before Olivia could respond, Ryan called out excitedly, "Hey, I think I've got something." Everyone turned to see him holding up a small device that resembled a wristwatch. Its surface pulsed with a faint blue light, and tiny symbols scrolled across its screen. Ryan grinned triumphantly. "I managed to hack into its system. If I'm reading this right, it's some kind of personal shield generator. Could protect us from their weapons." "That's incredible," Mia said, stepping closer to examine it. "But will it hold up against their firepower?" "Only one way to find out," Ryan replied with a shrug. "We'll need to test it." Grace spoke up next, holding up a vial of her glowing liquid. "I've been working on this strain of microbes. They're designed to break down metallic compounds. If we can deploy them effectively, they might weaken the Valerie's armor." Alex crossed his arms, nodding slowly. "Good work, everyone. This is exactly what we need. But remember, we're running out of time. 2 days isn't much to prepare for a war." The reminder sobered the group, and for a moment, silence fell over the warehouse. Then Mia broke the tension with a determined smile. "Then we'd better get moving." Over the next 24 hours, the team pushed themselves harder than ever before. Mia retrofitted 2 old fighter jets with plasma cannons salvaged from the crates, painting them matte black to reduce visibility. Ryan continued decoding the devices, managing to activate several more prototypes, including what appeared to be a handheld energy weapon. Grace finalized her biological agent, loading it into aerosol dispersal units that could be deployed during combat. Ethan and Olivia worked tirelessly to piece together a strategy. Using maps and satellite imagery, they identified key locations where the Valerie fleet might strike first. Power plants, communication hubs, and densely populated cities were all potential targets. They marked these areas on a large map pinned to the wall, plotting defensive positions and evacuation routes. Through it all, Alex remained the glue, holding the group together. He assigned tasks, mediated disagreements, and kept morale high with his dry humor and unwavering optimism. By the time the second day dawned, the warehouse looked less like a random collection of misfits and more like a fully operational rebel base. As the sun rose, casting long shadows across the desert floor, Alex called everyone together for a final briefing. Standing in front of the map, he addressed the group with quiet authority. "We've done everything we can to prepare," he began. "But let's not kid ourselves, this won't be easy. The Valerie are stronger, faster, and smarter than we are, but they've made one big mistake. They underestimated us." He paused, letting his words sink in. "They think we'll roll over and surrender. They think we're weak because we've relied on them for so long. Well, they're wrong. We've got grit, ingenuity, and heart. And most importantly, we've got each other." The room erupted in cheers, fists raised in defiance. For the first time in days, fear gave way to hope. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying with it the promise of change. The Valerie had declared war, but humanity wasn't backing down. Not this time. The calm before the storm was short-lived. Just as the team finished their preparations in the Nevada desert, alarms began blaring across Earth. A small Valerie scouting vessel had entered the atmosphere near Seattle, its sleek metallic form slicing through the clouds like a blade. The ship moved with purpose, targeting civilian infrastructure, power grids, water treatment plants, and communication towers. It wasn't an invasion yet, but it was a warning shot. News of the attack spread quickly, reaching Alex Monroe and his team within minutes. They gathered around a portable screen in the warehouse, watching live footage of the chaos unfolding in Seattle. Smoke billowed into the sky as explosions rocked the city. Civilians ran for cover, screaming and clutching whatever belongings they could carry. The Valerie weren't holding back. They were sending a message loud and clear: surrender or face destruction. "We need to act now," Mia Torres said firmly, her hands clenched into fists. "If we don't stop them here, they'll keep pushing until there's nothing left." "No argument from me," Alex replied, already moving toward the map pinned to the wall. "Seattle's too far for us to reach in time, but we can hit them where it hurts their ship." Ethan Carter frowned. "You're talking about taking on a Valerie vessel. With what? 2 retrofitted planes and some untested gadgets?" Mia crossed her arms, her expression fierce. "It's better than sitting here waiting for them to come to us. Besides, I didn't spend the last 2 days working on those jets just to let them sit in a hangar." "She's right," Olivia Drake chimed in. "If we can disable that scout ship, we might buy ourselves more time and maybe even gather intel on their fleet." Ryan Cole nodded in agreement. "I've been analyzing their tech. Their shields are strong, but not invincible. If we can get close enough, we might be able to punch through." Grace Bennett added quietly, "And if my biological agent works, it could weaken their defenses. We just need a way to deploy it." Alex studied the map for a moment longer before turning back to the group. "All right, here's the plan. Mia, you take one of the jets and engage the scout ship directly. Use the plasma cannons to draw their attention. Ethan, you go with her. Job is to deploy Grace's agent using the dispersal units. Ryan, stay here and monitor everything remotely. If anything goes wrong, you're our backup." "What about me?" Olivia asked. "You're coming with me," Alex said. We'll head to Seattle on the ground and coordinate with local militias. They've already started fighting back, and we might need their help. Everyone nodded, understanding the stakes. There was no room for hesitation, not anymore. Within minutes, they were ready to move. Mia climbed into the cockpit of her modified jet, strapping herself in tightly. The plane looked ancient, but under the hood, it was a beast. She powered up the engines, feeling the familiar rumble beneath her feet. Beside her, Ethan took his seat in the second jet, gripping the controls nervously. He wasn't a pilot, but he had spent hours practicing takeoffs and landings. This would be his first real flight, and failure wasn't an option. Ready? Mia asked, over the comms system. As ready as I'll ever be, Ethan replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. Good. Let's show these aliens what happens when you mess with Earth. With a roar of engines, the two jets lifted off the ground, disappearing into the sky. Below them, Alex and Olivia loaded weapons and supplies into a rugged off-road vehicle. They set off toward Seattle, racing against time. In Seattle, panic reigned supreme. Buildings burned, streets were deserted, and the air was thick with smoke. Local militias, ordinary citizens armed with whatever weapons they could find, had taken to the rooftops, firing at the scout ship as it hovered menacingly above the city. Their efforts were futile. The Valerie shields absorbed every bullet, without so much as a scratch. But they refused to give up. From the ground, Alex and Olivia surveyed the scene, ducking behind cover as debris rained down around them. Alex scanned the skyline, searching for any sign of Mia's approach. Where are they? He muttered anxiously. They'll be here, Olivia assured him, though her voice betrayed her own worry. Above them, the scout ship suddenly shifted position, its glowing underside scanning the area below. That's when Mia struck. Her jet screamed out of the clouds, unleashing a barrage of plasma fire. The shots hit the Valerie shields, creating bursts of energy that lit up the sky. The ship retaliated instantly, firing beams of light that narrowly missed Mia's plane. Now, she shouted into the comms. Ethan activated the dispersal unit mounted on his jet, releasing a cloud of Grace's glowing microbes. The particles swirled in the air, invisible to the naked eye, but deadly to the Valerie's armor. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, cracks began forming along the surface of the scout ship's hull. Its movements became sluggish, its weapons firing less accurately. Yes, Mia exclaimed, banking sharply to avoid another blast. It's working. On the ground, Alex spotted the weakening ship and signaled to the militias. Keep firing, he yelled. Their shields are down. The militiamen opened fire again, this time with greater success. Bullets and makeshift explosives tore through the damaged hull, forcing the scout ship to descend. It crashed into an empty field outside the city, its once gleaming surface scorched and broken. Inside the downed ship, Valari soldiers scrambled to repair the damage. They hadn't expected resistance not like this. As Alex and Olivia approached, cautiously, weapons drawn, they exchanged a glance. This victory was minor, but symbolic. Humanity still had fight left in it. Back in the skies, Mia circled the crash site, ensuring the enemy wasn't regrouping. Over the comms, she heard Ethan's voice, shaky but triumphant. We did it, he said. We actually did it. For the first time in days, hope flickered to life. The Valari had underestimated humanity, and they were about to learn the hard way. Earth wasn't going down without a fight.